Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Portal Room. I hope everybody's having a great day so far. Today we are joined by a very special guest, and I have to admit I'm really looking forward to this conversation, probably for a variety of reasons. But with that being said, let's welcome artist, painter, musician, formerly with Circa Survive, psychic Babble. Let's welcome our good friend Colin. Hey Colin,
What's
welcome to
up?
the show, man.
What's up, Paul?
So Colin, I'm super stoked to get into it with you. A lot of things that I want to ask, but really, this is something that I think kind of really is what interested me in wanting to have you on. So it seems like this is might be like maybe a 2 or 3 part question, but I want to start off here. Yeah,
Okay.
right. Always start off with the technical question, right? But so it seems like a lot of artists and musicians are drawn to topics like consciousness, the paranormal, or a contact. So I guess my question is, why do you think that is? And is there like a particular personal experience that opened you up to these types of subjects, or was it more of a gradual curiosity that developed alongside your creative path?
Oh man. Um, this is going to be the whole episode. Just this question. Um, why
Sorry.
do my person? No, it's great. My personal opinion is that I think a lot of artists tend to exist outside of time in a way. They certainly um tend to exist in a less mundane, less predictable reality, um, and that is sort of a ripe environment for high strangeness, and certainly, I think you wind up paying a closer attention to the things around you, whether you're making music, whether you're painting pictures or making films or writing books or whatever. I think people who are making things tend to be pretty good observers, and I think observation is like a huge part of the phenomenon, and really why well it's a major ingredient anyway. I'll say that. And so I wouldn't say that artists are like chosen ones or special in any way in this regard. I just think that it's because of the way that their attention is trained in a slightly different direction, right? Um, and I think that there's plenty of other fields that probably have a similar scenario going on, but that's just my hypothesis. I'm open to changing it. I I also think that if you're creating things, that you're often inviting energy in, right? And I think that consciousness is a mystery. I think all of this is a mystery. We'll get more into that. I think that that's key. I'm not an expert, and to be honest, people who declare themselves as experts on what I think is fundamentally an unsolvable mystery should be distrusted. Most likely, they're charlatans if they call themselves experts in that. But
Oh yeah.
anyway, I just think that um, I think that by inviting in um, energy, and sometimes that's just literally looking for inspiration, sometimes that's just pondering questions, or even just communicating with people who think differently, traveling, all of this kind of stuff, I think puts you at just in a very kind of like potent atmosphere. And I think John Keel called them window areas. So I think, like, you wind up, but both, and I kind of take that both physically and also metaphorically. Like, I don't think it's just physical places, but I do think physical places have certain, they're more ripe for high strangeness and things. But also, I think window areas of your life, window areas of your daily routine, all that. For me, I think it's just been like a nonstop, one thing after the next since being very young. The other thing is that I think if you're, I hate like, I don't know, the specification of like saying like, oh, you do something for a living. But if you sort of like go from childhood straight into this very strange full-time existence at a young age, you sort of retain a certain level of awe and wonder that I think allows you to stay open. And for me, I started touring in high school, and so basically, like, I swear, I feel like I was one of those kids that like I like believed I believed in like Santa Claus to like a very long time, and I always like, even after like having that kind of bubble popped, very strongly still learning sort of like these like fundamental truths about adult reality as a kid never canceled out the full thing, right? I think a lot of people, they hear that and they're like, oh, well, that means none of this other stuff is real, right?
Right.
And for me, that was never the case, and that's still kind of interesting. That like that's still the way my brain operates. Just because one thing isn't true doesn't make all things untrue. Just because one thing is true doesn't make all things true. But so for me, like, I still have this very strong, I think, openness to magic and the flexibility of reality. And so all types of strange experiences as a child, but then certainly once I started traveling the country, like in high school with my band, this day forward, a bunch of my just best friends in the world, we just started a band and just started fucking, we all worked jobs to basically pay for us to tour. That was just how we did it. And so it was like we would go see bands play music every single night of the week. And we were like very young. And then we'd be like playing shows on the weekend, or like literally like driving 20 hours to go play one show and then driving back, missing one day of school. Like we did the whole weekend warrior thing. So like, yeah, just really all of that intense travel and lack of sleep and all of that stuff just put me right in the middle of like all these strange experiences. And there's a lot of them. I mean, I think I couldn't pick just one, but if I really started to think about like maybe the origin of what led me into, UAP, NHI, like all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Let's just say like paranormal. It started with sleep paralysis. So I started having sleep paralysis at a pretty young age, and then and it would kind of like come and go. Like I would have like months where I would just be having it all the time. And for people who don't know what it is, you're just literally you find yourself kind of paralyzed while you're somewhere in between sleep and awake, and you're kind of in like this hypnagogic state. And it's quite terrifying because usually there are entities involved, and
Right. That was going to be my question. I was going to ask, is there anything visual, and what was it?
Yeah, certainly. So I had a lot of like very weird encounter-esque experiences like via sleep paralysis. And for a long time I just thought of them as like these like night terrors, you know. And I guess essentially you can define them as such. But for me, some of them just really bordered on, like, they really blurred the line between was I sleeping or was I dreaming, and where did the paralysis end, and when did I wind up in the middle of my room or, you know, somewhere else. And so there was a lot of these weird experiences like that. And at first it was just like this awareness of presence, and it was always uncanny and um, unsettling. But then it started progressively getting more terrifying and sort of dark and like, I would say, like borderline like attackish. And yeah, so like
How old were you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
when they first started, or when I
Yeah.
noticed like
Yeah, when it
well,
first started.
when
Yeah.
they first started, I don't know, man. I honestly like probably somewhere between 10 and 12. Like, I don't know, like I had
Gotcha.
the actual experience of the paralysis definitely quite a few times before I started having conscious memories of it. It was more like I didn't know even what paralysis it was. Like, all I knew is that I would just be very scared, and then it was like, oh, you're just having a nightmare, you know. Like, that was kind of like what I would tell myself afterwards. And then yeah, but I started like having these weird encounter type things, like between 12 and 14. Um, and yeah, it wasn't constant at all. Like, it started actually becoming more and more sparse. Like, there'd be a lot of time in between them. And I really didn't have any rhyme or reason as to why they were happening. It wasn't like, oh, I get it. Like, every time I eat pears, the fucking old hag visits me in the middle of the night. You know, it wasn't like that. It was very like seemingly random, but eventually I started to like figure out like, oh, okay, there are certain things that would sort of bring them on. But anyway, yeah, like I had a very distinct I have a very distinct memory of one of these, because it was like the first time I actually had an out of body experience, because I essentially was resisting this this shadow being thing that was sort of it was like approaching me, and I was just sort of paralyzed, stuck there, and feeling all kinds of terror. And then it was like crawling onto me, and like I could feel myself like really struggling to breathe. And I started really fighting back, like trying everything you can. Like, if you've had a dream where you're really like fighting with everything you have to like talk, but you can't, like that kind of feeling. Um,
Yes.
so it was like that, and it was this buildup of like I was just fighting so hard, and then all of a sudden there was just like this really strong vibration and super loud noise, like a rocket ship, but like almost like a rocket ship hybrid, like old school dial-up modem sound almost, you know, like almost
Yeah.
like Matrix style, you know, like that was kind of what it sounded like, but it was way more. I couldn't really replicate it for you, you know. It was like just of some other um, world, you know, and so that was terrifying. But like that noise seemed to just literally like shoot me out of my body like a cannon, and then all of a sudden it was like this. I thought I died because the awareness was so different. It was like 360-degree vision, like very stuck, kind of like I was like in the corner of my room, like the very corner between the ceiling and like just that corner spot where your wall meets
Right.
the ceiling. And I was just like stuck there, but like also could like simultaneously, like almost like a video game glitch, I could like sense the entire outside of like the house. behind me. I could sense it all at once, and it was just so bizarre. It was such an alien experience for me. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, I was just like literally just like through solid wall outside, and just sort of like just terrified, feeling like I had
Yeah.
no control. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm Superman, I can fly around. Like, that was not it at all. I was like, I felt like I was just like about to get sucked into some black hole in space, you know? And I kind of did, in a weird way. But anyway, that again, immense terror. At first, like, I would get these feelings of like, this is really cool, kind of almost like I was really trying to accept the fact that I died or something. Like, oh, this is cool. Uh, and now I kind of recognize that rationalization of like when I've taken psychedelics and like, I'm like, okay, this is okay. I can deal with this. Like, even if I had to spend my whole life like this, I'd be fine. Even though
Yeah.
like, no, you wouldn't. um,
Yeah. No, I get it. So you were kind of like, and I don't want to say like tripping, but kind of like what you were saying
yeah.
in a
I mean, this
sense.
was
Yeah.
a dead sober experience, but so that I felt immense fear again, and then all of a sudden I was like, boom, like right back inside of my body, and kind of like woke up, and I was like, again, was that a fucking dream? Because that was insane. Like, everything about it was so lucid and so crystal clear. And yeah, so that just really, I think, like, it opened this door in my mind of curiosity. And I was just like, what was that, you know? And I had never heard of an out of body experience. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know any of this stuff was. And then it was probably honestly, like, it was like quite a few years later. I I was we were on tour, and I had had a bunch of weird sleep paralysis things since then, and had also had some weird sightings and some other things happen. I mean, there was actually a pretty big weird um like group encounter I had with some high school friends. Well, middle school, I guess. It was like in between middle school and high school. But anyway, lots of weird experiences.
Right.
But I was an adult. I was a very young adult on tour when I really started like buying books and like really starting to like get completely consumed by the topic.
Wow. Okay, so you astral traveled periodically,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then from there, I guess you can say it kind of got you down this path. And you did mention other sightings and so forth. So I'd maybe like to get into that a little later, but
Sure.
I did want to ask you something in particular that I think it's a little bit of a sidebar, but
Yeah.
it's something that I'm curious about because I've noticed it in a lot of artists that I enjoy listening to. So with a lot of your work, and I'll just kind of be straightforward about it, just like guitar wise. So I've noticed there's a very ethereal, spacious sound in the guitar work.
Hmm.
Now, do you think that your sonic choices are consciously or subconsciously influenced by either your inner or anomalous experiences? Again, like you said, this whole sleep paralysis thing, and it kind of ticked a bell. I'm like, I wonder like where these etheric ideas come from, right? Like what inspires us as artists, right? Like, and I don't know, I guess I hear that, right, as its own language. So I'm just wondering, you know, sonically the choices you've made, and do you think it is a direct, do you, is it correlated to some of these experiences, or, kind of just maybe subconsciously correlated? Do you think there's any connection there?
That's a good question. I mean, Yes and no. I think the way I see it is that art forms are really accumulation of, I mean, there are some people that are just total, you know, anomalies, but I would say art is like accumulation of influence and experience. And the more you, the more serious you get about an art form, the more you start to sort of like parse signal and noise in terms of what is influence and what is like this kind of like compulsion, this inner you-ness that is maybe unique or um, you know, coming through, filtered through memories and experiences and all that stuff. But I kind of put influence in that same field, you know, like for me,
Yes.
creating work is just really about, and that this is about any type of medium, really. For me, it's really about being fully present with like the act itself, like almost like hypnotically, and trying to erase my thoughts. And so trying to become basically this channel for all of my lived experience. And that is obviously very much includes like every record I've ever listened to, every guitar player I ever loved, like every painting I've ever looked at, every movie I've ever watched, every book I've ever read. And then, of course, everything I've ever created prior to that, as you know, as well as all of my lived experience. So, like personally, you know, so like losses and triumphs and fears and like all of these things, right? So it's really about becoming a vessel for all of that to come through in the moment that I'm touching a string or creating a beat or whatever it is. And really, you know, for a long time, I thought like, oh, well, I need to just like concentrate more. I need to think more. I need to like plan more. I need to structure better, blah, 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 blah. What I really needed to do was to trust my instincts more, to sort of like unlearn a lot of things that I thought I was supposed to do. And so, you know, the ethereal thing, that's, you know, that's just a choice, you know what I mean? Everything that you do aesthetically, aesthetics, and this is where I would say like visual art has really helped me like understand the creation of music better, because it's really given me this clear understanding of aesthetics versus vision, like aesthetics versus message, aesthetics versus spirit. Aesthetics is really kind of like a costume. Aesthetic is branding. It's trickery, you know, and it's not necessarily something, I'm not giving it like a pejorative like thing here. I'm not saying like, oh, it's evil, right? But like in a lot of ways I see aesthetics as Trojan horses, you know. It's like the idea is like I want you to like feel what I felt when I tried to create this thing, right? And maybe I think that the way to get it through the gates is like with this like washy kind of like dreamy sound, or maybe it's like this biting weird octave, like, you know, uh dirty like big muff distortion. Like, I mean, all of that stuff is just like greasing the wheels. Like you're just like, how do I get this through so that it goes straight past their thinking mind and into their like feeling body? And like that's the way I think about it. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
So you're saying basically that the aesthetics is more of the extension and the tool is the creative process or
Yeah,
language.
I mean, it's more like almost like an invisible field of energy that you're trying to transport. into people. And like that's why,
Right.
again, like I think it's so easy when you're younger and you're trying to like bang your head up against the wall and like break through in some way, like figure out like, oh, how do I make a record and how do I get people to listen to it, or how do I get a solo show and get my paintings to sell and all this stuff. But then once you do that, like you start to realize there is like this whole other level of like, okay, what is this really about? Because that's kind of like the surface level conversation in the at the party, right? And you're like, okay, like how do we get past this and into the other part? And so like for me, I like see it as like warfare in a lot of ways, and I mean that in a loving sense, but like you're at war with like all of the things that people's minds are going to come up with as to like reasons why they shouldn't let the thing that you're sending to them, why they shouldn't receive it, why they shouldn't like hear it, why they shouldn't look at it, why they shouldn't part with their hard-earned like energy credits for it. And yeah, I've just learned to sort of see all this stuff in a very like through an abstract lens, and not get sucked into the nitty gritty of it all, because that's how you get stuck in these grooves of repetition that are very problematic and frustrating. And you're like, why can't I make a guitar riff without using this pedal? Or why can't I seem to create a
Right.
painting without relying on this one approach or this, and I think the more distance you can get from all that and stop thinking about it and really just make things and continue to follow intuition and listen to your intuition with how you do it. I mean, that's really where the blending of what we're talking about here, like the phenomena and creativity, like this is where it's at. Like this is where those things meet, right?
Yes.
And it is like, if you looked at like the Venn diagram of it all, in the center of it, what's overlapping it is mystery, the mystery, right? Like, and I think that that's very, very critical to stay aware of at all times and not get super hung up on, you know, any
No, yeah.
little part of it.
I love that you said it's kind of like listening to a ton of people at once. It kind of gave me like the Superman visual when he's like hearing everybody all at once. Like maybe in a sense, what you're talking about is like the collective consciousness or something. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what it made me think of. But
Yeah.
I do think, yeah, there is something to like the artistic mindset that resonates with mystery, kind of like what you were saying right now. So, yeah.
Well, like just in your question, in your example, asking, um, you know, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I was interpreting your question about the ethereal sound of a guitar, type of guitar line that I would write or something like that. And you're wondering if I'm influenced by my experiences in the paranormal, and putting that into that. And I think, is that what you were asking essentially?
Yeah, I was saying, do you think there's an element of it that is either conscious or unconscious? And obviously, I would say probably yeah, but I guess I was trying to get you to open up kind of the way you did, really, which was great. So
Cool.
I think you kind of described my, what I was trying to get out of you.
Okay,
So
cool. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
no, that
I
was
just want to make
perfect
sure
though.
I'm being a good guest here and giving satisfying answers.
You're doing great. And also, real quick, you do have somebody that asked a question right here. They said, Colin, are there any creative projects, practices you've been finding catharsis lately? So, yeah.
Catharsis. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like fully immersed in creating visual art, in a very full-time way. Um, I'm mostly focused on making digital work right now. I'm working with a lot of like different modalities, and I'm as of recently been like experimenting a lot with video stuff. I haven't really been putting any of that out yet, but I'm kind of like in the incubation laboratory right now. But yeah, really like creating. I spent the last like 2 years or so making like digital collage work that is just basically almost like pure um like very pure appropriation, cut and paste, like no painting, just taking existing things and using them as if they were paint, I guess you could say. Um, really spending my days like letting my obsession with all kinds of different topics lead me around, and I'm getting pummeled with imagery all day, and I'm just constantly saving images, screenshotting them, recording them, whatever, and just putting them into a folder, and then later I just try to like assemble them into something that sort of makes makes me, it's like this like perfect key into like that month or 3 months of my life or whatever it is, because I can see everything that I was like reading, everything that I was like seeing on the timeline, all that stuff is in there completely obliterated and chopped into a million pieces. But yeah, so um collages were a really interesting art form that for a long time I actually got really into it when I was very young, but I stepped away from it for a long time. I was very just like very into music for a long time, and then I got very into painting simultaneously with music, and then just yeah, over the last like I would say 5 years or so, got really immersed in digital art and um, still make some physical art too. I especially like making sort of like hybrid of digital and physical art, but yeah, the I find that digital collage especially is so um simpatico with like what like current reality is, and I feel like we're existing in this strange um like every like just remix culture, like everything is everywhere. People are constantly like reacting to people's videos, like posting memes that someone else posted. Like for a long time I used to be like hyper obsessed with sort of like getting credit for things, and like who's the author of this and who
Yeah.
made this and who did that, and is this copyrighted and is this that, and I got really, I just got very, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around when sort of like overnight the world decided that music was free. I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And then like, and honestly, like I was pretty for it, even though it made things a little difficult and strange at times, like as a musician. It felt intuitively correct. And then, so like over the course of like the last decade or so, just really seeing like, I don't know, like just seeing an intellectual property kind of like dissolve into the ether, and AI just becoming this super strange hyper object that is just like constantly um like morphing and changing, and like I
Evolving.
yeah, like I'm not I'm still learning it. I'm not very adept at using AI. Like um I try to like learn about it as much as possible so I don't get totally left behind, but it's not really for me in my art form. At least not yet. It's not but it's interesting. But I would say that the culture of it and the culture of like hip hop and like sampling beats and like people like internet culture in general is just so homogenous and like you know strange. So for me digital collage is like very satisfying, very cathartic, because in a lot of ways I feel like I'm getting assaulted with imagery and content at all times. And for me, getting to rearrange it all into some meaningful way is really kind of empowering, because it gives me back some of my agency in terms of how I process that material, which I think normally kind of just goes completely subconsciously unprocessed, or you process it subconsciously or whatever. So yeah. And it's also
Oh,
just interesting to make an image without a paintbrush, but using, like, I could like use another image as a brush, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just very yeah, conducive to my current state of mind, I guess.
I love it, and I actually really like your collages. It's
Thank you.
almost, it kind of reminds me like those pictures. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, where it's like a ton of little pictures, and it makes
Like a
like a,
mosaic kind of.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
oh yes, 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 I know what you're talking about. Oh, wait, that has like a specific title. Yeah, like all the small little photographs that make some larger photograph.
Yes.
Um yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, the name of my recent series is called Inset, and that's quite literally what inset can mean. It can mean like a smaller piece in a larger whole. And yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways that's a very psychedelic concept if you think about it. I think there's a lot of
Fractalization.
yeah, I mean, you could take a lot of like metaphorical meaning from that, in terms of like, the same, like the micro and the macro, you know, as below, as above, so below, that kind of whole like idea, the idea that you can see like kind of like the inside of the human anatomy, kind of like is what the universe looks like, all that kind of stuff. Um, so I think like what you're describing there, it is sort of part of what I'm getting at with these works for sure. There's so many small little Easter eggs hidden all around it, and sometimes I am creating bigger forms with smaller forms, with a group of smaller forms, and that's one of the really fun things about digital work, is that you can play with resolution in a way that you can just keep zooming in and finding stuff, and yet if you pull back and look at it like a normal thing, it can read almost like an abstract painting or something else. Yeah. So one of my cats is getting a little spicy over here. I don't know what she's doing.
No worries. We welcome cats to the portal room, mainly because they keep the aliens away. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of aliens, should we get into more of that?
Yeah, no, totally, we should. So, I mean, you did mention that you had a couple of sightings and while you were touring as well. So that's pretty interesting. What's like the earliest one that you can remember, and kind of like just go down like where you were at and what you were doing, and then we'll get into it from there.
Um, I mean, I do have some really good stories, but honestly, I don't even know if they're like, I don't know how satisfying they are to tell. Like, I almost feel like for me, like, like a lot, like I definitely had some weird stuff as a kid. Like my brother and I had a few times where we both had the same dream and wound up in this room in our house, or this living room in my parents' house. And that involved like, lights and like immense fear and sort of us looking outside. There was like a storm, and we both like recalled it as a dream, but then like like directly after having this shared dream, where to me, like, it now looking back on it, it does sound exactly like a typical sort of like a abduction scenario. He used to like, after all that, he used to like just say all these really strange things to me all the time, like right before he was going to sleep, and constantly be like looking out his window and showing me things out his window. And it was always like very weird, because I didn't really press him on it or like be like, the fuck are you talking about? It's almost like I knew what he was saying, but I didn't want to talk to him about it. Um, oh my god, this is too funny. What my one cat is like burrowed like behind a bunch of these boxes, and she's making some insane noises.
I love it.
Apologies if you have to edit that out later, but
Really can't hear it at all, to
okay,
be
good.
honest.
Okay, good. Um, so yeah, and then like after that shared dream, like he started having like sleepwalking fits, and they were always like so strange. Um, and they almost always involved like a high level of fear, and him sort of like it almost felt like he was replaying that experience that we had, because I would be awake, we'd be hanging out, he would get sleepy, and then he would sort of doze off, and then all of a sudden he would start like just talking complete nonsense, which a lot of people who have sleepwalking tendencies, or like they have these types of like yeah, I mean essentially I think it is all related to the sleepwalking phenomenon, but people that have that, they will like just they say the craziest shit when they go into there, and you're just like you can't make sense what they're saying, but you can kind of converse with them, and it's like they're talking in like some kind of weird code. And
Is it kind of, like Step Brothers when,
yes, yes,
you know what I'm
yes,
talking
yeah,
about?
like 100%. And actually, it's funny because the bassist of Circa, Nick, he would do shit like that all the time too. Like there was times where he would just
Oh,
literally
wow.
like in while we were on the bus and we were all sleeping, he would like I slept in the bunk above him, and there was a time where actually there was multiple times he did this, but this one time especially, he like just pushed up on my bunk so hard, and it like woke me up. Like he like pushed me up, and then like I like drew my curtain back, like what the fuck, you know? And like all of a sudden I just see him like running down the fucking like hall of the bus, like just like screaming, like saying something about a fire or whatever. And I was like, oh my god. And I like jumped out, and like I'm like, there's nothing. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? And like when the next day, like he didn't remember like interacting with me or anything, but he told me that he had this intense dream where like essentially like that like the bunk, and the bunk became sort of like this weird metallic sort of like automatic door essentially that was like trying to crush him. So he was trying to like keep himself from getting crushed, and so he kept like pushing super hard on it. But yeah, so he had all these sleep weird sleep things, and he would like just say random shit like in the middle of the night. And then his ex-wife like told us a bunch of stories where she was like, yeah, like last night he just randomly said like, there's a wizard. And she's like, wait, what? It's like, he's like, oh, over there. I can see him. And like, he'll just say like shit, like stuff that you're just like, what are you talking about, dude? Like they're just somewhere else. They're in dreamland, or they're like in another dimension and experiencing something, and you really can't make them like interact with this reality at all. It's really interesting. But anyway, yeah, so all these strange experiences with my brother when we were younger, and then there was a camping experience um, with a bunch of my classmates. That was definitely the weirdest one for sure, but it's a really long story. And to be honest, like I'd rather focus more on just for me, the more like seductive and really intriguing stuff is um usually related to synchronicity, and usually related to um yeah, like high strangeness stuff, like you know which I've come to sort of see all of it as being one thing. And I think essentially everything we're talking about here tonight, like to me,
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys, like I think everything is like, I think it's all consciousness related. I think everything, then consciousness is at the heart of this thing for sure. Um, and so for me, like some of the most because I'll be honest, like the more like close encountery type of things that I've had, they leave me like really confused. And I don't know if it's just because I'm built very skeptically. It's almost like I just refuse. I refuse to believe that it was like a UFO and an alien. Like I just can't. I can't. No matter how many experiences I've had that sort of come close to that, um, they always leave me shrugging because so much of it is kind of confounding and stubborn in terms of like, yeah, like just how it breaks down in reality. That's
Well,
why
well,
I am very skeptical of like uh disclosure operations and the government
right.
part of all this. But we, alas,
No,
I
well,
digress.
I mean, I'm the same way, to be honest. I'm the same way. So, I mean, I understand the hesitancy as well because I think a lot of it is consciousness as well. Maybe most of it might be trauma, but I mean, who knows? So that's kind of why I asked that question, is just because sometimes when you hear someone's experience, there is like this metaphor or something that happened that intersects, right, with whatever the phenomena is. So that's why I'm always curious. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, if you feel like you don't want to, go into it, that's totally fine. But that's kind of the reason why I asked, because I think like just like the way you're describing, I'm very skeptical myself. So I'm always interested to know, like, because I guess I'm trying to draw connections on why this stuff happens for people. And
Hmm.
I've been seeing a lot of patterns with not just trauma, but it's always like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. It's always built into it's always built into some type of ideology that that person kind of already was born into, kind of like what you were saying earlier, like your openness to imagination, if that makes sense. If that makes sense.
None of this makes sense, man. Yeah, I mean, no, I feel
Thank you.
you completely. I think, and I think what I'm saying about those, those stories that I kind of see as encounters, it's almost like they're not satisfying to tell because they make me feel like I'm missing something, or I'm telling something out of order, or I'm remembering it wrong, or or I'm going to sound crazy or whatever, right? And the
Good
truth
point.
is, like, those ones don't leave me feeling as convinced as some of these other things that I've experienced. And again, if we're thinking that all of this is relating to constructions of consciousness, then these other stories are just as convincing, in my opinion. So I'll
Yeah.
happily tell some of these other stories, which, I mean, um, you know, I I have had I have had some experiences with synchronicity that um are ongoing, like continuation, um, like almost like a thread, a narrative, uh, go on for over like upwards of a year and a half before. I basically was like haunted by a I was essentially like stalked and haunted by like octopi synchronicities for a year, like a year plus.
Oh,
And
wow.
um and it was born out of a psychedelic experience that happened in Hawaii. And within that psychedelic experience, um there was also an encounter in that experience. And it was like, and it was at the foot of the ocean on the beach, a private beach with like no one else around, just me and the people that were, um we had all ingested mushrooms together. And I've taken mushrooms a bajillion times in my life. um this this is unlike anything else I'd ever experienced. It had a completely different layer onto the experience, right? And essentially there was a communication with some kind of weird entity in the water. And it wasn't like an octopus. I didn't see an octopus there. I didn't see anything. There was a glowing light, but there was like telepathic communication happening between it and me, and certainly with other people, even though they might not admit that. They did things because it told them to. And so you know, you can imagine my interest when there started to be all this chatter about the like underwater stuff, because I was just like,
The
oh wow,
USOs. Yeah.
yeah. So all of that, the thing is like, again, like we have to always accept for the blurring of physicality and like like psychic phenomena, because I do think that they're constantly interlinked. But here's the thing, like, and when you read like people like Jacques Vallée and like John Keel and stuff, they talk about how like there's literally like a built-in mechanism of the phenomena that is confounding. There's a built-in mechanism that is almost like insulating its existence, like concealing it. It's like a self-concealing mechanism of absurdity. And so a lot of these encounters, a lot of these instances have so many intricate things happen within them that are so absurd that, well, one, they don't read as like the typical Hollywood narrative, right? Because that's just not how it goes. The typical Hollywood narrative could never encapsulate all of these nuances and all of these small details. But these small details are what completely light your brain on fire when it's happening, and you're like, how is that fucking possible, right? um and so for me, and I will tell a couple like specific stories at a certain point, but I think it's more valuable to just sort of talk about theoretically what I think, like kind of like how this stuff has made me feel and what has sort of occurred. Um, because I do think that a lot of this stuff, it makes me more warm to like the ultra terrestrial ideas, and certainly um yeah, just the more outside of the box theories around this stuff. Because to me, like I'll just be real. I think the people in the psychedelic space, especially certain people, um, doing research on DMT, and people like Diana Slattery. She wrote a book called Xenolinguistics, and she basically for like multiple years took different substances in very um like rigid research manner, alone, in isolation, would would document every substance she took, whatever the dosage or whatever, and basically um learned an entire, like learned or created an entire like alien language, like um and there was like all of this documentation throughout that where she felt like it was very direct communication happening. And um that book's amazing, by the way. I really recommend anyone check it out, because it gives you, like, I think what is very hard to describe is the subtleties of this communication, and learning how to work with it, how to sense it, and be open to it, while also simultaneously keeping up your guard, um, mentally so that you don't wind up in a psych ward. Like that's kind of key to all this. Because for me, like being a person who like has my default set on skeptic pretty hard. Well, I'll say like that depends on how recently I have taken psychedelics. So like I will be a bit more
Great answer.
I'm a bit more malleable, 6 months or so after a really strong experience, right? But in general, my default is set to pretty hard skeptic. And when I say skeptic, I mean true skeptic, not atheist materialist, like reject everything. I mean, literally, I just don't fully believe or buy into anything. I'm open to everything. And I acknowledge that I do not know what is real. But I am fucking obsessed and hyper fascinated with all of it, right? And again, like, not to throw mud, but like I think that that's one of the biggest problems with the current state of the UAP NHI community is like there's just too many people claiming that they know shit, and then there's
Yes.
too many people who only want to hear what they want to hear. And yeah, it's just really frustrating to me, like just the amount of closed-mindedness within a space that's literally trying to make contact with extraterrestrials, or like understand something that is so profoundly ontologically shocking, yet they can't accept anything outside of their own narrative. And it's just like so funny to me. It's infinitely funny, but then other times it's sad and frustrating. But anyway, I digress. Like what I was saying about being set on skeptic is that over the course of a year of all this stuff happening, of like feeling like I'm engaging and communicating with some kind of entity that is invisible to me, but that is manifesting through events and using elements of my everyday life, media, um, thoughts in my mind, dreams, um, all types of things to communicate, right? And so over that course of that time, as a very skeptical person, I would literally spend all of my energy some days coming up with the logical explanation for what is happening, right? Just like really, like just going through, okay, how can I explain this? And eventually, you come up with a couple ways, but usually there's like one or two little fucking holes in it, and you're like, and it's kind of like that feeling when you're watching someone do a magic trick in front of you and you just can't figure out how they're doing it, but you're like, I know you're cheating. I know you're not a fucking wizard. But like the fact is that maybe there is something going on there, right? Maybe there is some element of um, reality sort of collapsing and something that we can't explain happening, right? But like throughout that whole time this was definitely, I've had so many synchronicities in my life, and it's become a thing that I've really welcomed, and I'm just infinitely fascinated by it. But this was a lot, and I've never had it do this. I've never had it be themed. I've never had it be a thing where all the times prior to this, I could always just kind of assume this is some super bizarre phenomenon of like of memory, like deja vu, what's the fucking apophenia, like apophenia, where you're just like seeing meaningful patterns and things that don't have them. I could explain all this away, but then this happens where it's like themed, and it seems like there's something on the other side of it, right? It really feels like whatever it is completely knows what I'm thinking at all times. Because when I'm in my most skeptical and my most combative, and I am just pouring like doubt on the thing that it just did, it would basically be like, oh yeah, like that was essentially what it would do. Oh really? Okay, well how about this? And then it would just sort of one up itself or do something that was sort of just like this total fucking mind-blowing wink, right? And I'll be honest, like there were a lot of times where it really scared me. Like it really felt like poltergeisty. It felt like I was yeah, like I had fucking opened some
Wow.
strange like portal, not to be
I was waiting
you
for
know
it.
on the nose, but like but that's what it felt like. And at a certain point, through the encouragement of my wife, who is a witch and is like very psychic herself and extremely tapped in and very open, thankfully, because otherwise I would have been toast. I was she started experiencing them with me, and I was documenting everything the whole time, right, as best I could. Whether it was if it was media, I was taking images of it and writing it down. If it was something that was happening psychically, like within like a dream or like a thought that felt sort of precognitive or whatever, I would be talking to her about it as it would happen. That I was telling her things as much as possible so that if something did occur, she would know, oh, you were saying you were just thinking that earlier. Like, you know what I mean? Kind of like as this witness, like someone who would be able to, um, you know, both witness it with me to help me not feel like I was losing my mind, but also someone who could help me corroborate it. And so yeah, it definitely, she started witnessing some of this stuff. And um, it was like, okay, through her encouragement, I started to really welcome it, right? So I was getting really scared, and then she was just like, "Let me ask you something. Like, why are you scared?" Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Oh no. I don't know if I'm by myself. It says everyone can see or hear me. I'm going to assume that Paul maybe dropped out and that you guys can all see me. This is confounding. This is kind of what I'm talking about. I don't know if you guys can see me or not. All right, I'm going to text him real quick. So stand by 1 moment. Can you see me? Are you?
Colin, sorry
You're,
about that.
oh, you're good. You're good. Okay, I was like
How long,
getting.
did I just cut out or something,
Yeah,
bro?
yeah. I was just alone, and I was like, "Can everybody see me still?" It said they could, but I didn't know. So I was talking to them.
Sorry
Um,
about that, everybody. Technical issue. Yeah, I got
um,
abducted. That's basically what happened right now.
nice, nice. I was like, this is kind of like what I mean, like these perfect
That was
moments.
pretty on
Uh,
point right
yeah.
there. I don't know what happened. That never happens.
um. So okay, so like, she'd be like, "Why are you afraid of it?" And I was like, "Because it's fucking freaking me out. Like, because if it has the power to communicate with me like this and literally change my reality, then that means it could fucking destroy me, and that's very scary to me." She's like, "Well, has it harmed you at all?" And I was just like, "No." Has it done anything demonic or like anything remotely seeming like it has ill intent towards you? And I'm just like, "No." And she really made a lot of points. Like, you know, I think you need to start welcoming it a bit more and sort of playing with it because it's obviously playing with you. Like maybe you need to like, just really get in there. And so with her encouragement, I started to really love it, right? And I started to follow its signals. And so, for instance, I had taken its cue. Basically, there are all these weird there was always a linkage, right? So one thing would lead to the next. One conversation with one person, like, so I would, let's say I had just had a week of these synchronicities, and then I'm talking to you, and you say something to me as we're talking about this story, and then like an hour later, exactly something, let's say like someone in the back of your room, you know, at your house, like said something exactly while we were talking about the octopus, right? And then an hour later, that word like is like burned onto my TV screen, like it's frozen for a second, and I see that word and I remember, like, holy fuck, right? It's like that kind of subtlety, right?
Yeah.
But if you're paying attention, it's like chilling, right? So I was just like having one after the next, and it was just like bowling me over, and I was basically like just stunned at what was happening. And I had followed it all the way to LA. I had followed it to basically meet this person I was a fan of, this guy Shane Moss. He's a psychedelic comedian, and he had a whole, like, you know, he is a bipolar, so he would have like manic episodes sometimes, and he would, like, he had a very intense, like, long period of getting synchronicities as well. So I knew that he sort of understood. But I started having sort of like theme ones around his content. I randomly had a synchronicity around his announcement for the screening of his documentary. So I just fucking bought a ticket. I bought a flight. I was like, I'm going to LA. I'm going to go see this thing. As I like post about it, he like DMs me and we start talking for the first time. And then he's like, hey, this guy, um, you know, he's a big fan of mine, but like he's a really sweet guy. Like he is looking someone to like Airbnb room with him or whatever. Normally I would never say yes to this. And I was just like, but I was in the fucking portal. So I was just like, yes, right. And I just invited in. So I wind up like sharing this Airbnb with this total stranger in LA, to go see this documentary screening. Um, as this is all coming together, I also wind up meeting this guy, Ramin Nazer, who's an incredible artist and an amazing podcaster. I wind up going to his podcast studio, and then as it turns out, like, he is very close and tight with Shane. In fact, he's going to the screening. In fact, after months of listening to his podcast and having synchronicities around his podcast, I told the whole story on his podcast in real time. I wind up, like, we're like running late. He literally drives me to the screening. So like I wind up going to the screening with Ramin. It felt very like fucking cinematic. Like these people who I didn't know months prior, but was having all of these strange synchronicities around. All of a sudden, like I'm in like the main scene of like I'm in this dude's car. I just was in his house doing a podcast. All of a sudden, I'm going to the screening with him. He like did the visuals for the movie. I'm like at the premiere. I meet Shane for the first time. Multiple different synchronicities happening during that day, all like around the octopus. And then I fucking have you know, there's like an after party after the thing. And again, usually I'd be like, fuck this, I'm going back to my hotel, or the Airbnb in this case. First of all, I had immediate synchronicities with the dude in the dark. He came in the middle of the night. We hadn't even formally met yet. We introduced we're like, hey, hey, good to meet you. Like in the pitch darkness of this bedroom that we were sharing in this person's house, this random house in LA. So weird. And he brought up Terrence McKenna in this conversation. He brought up some fucking quote, and this is before I had told him anything. And the next day, I'm looking up the quote that he told me, and right below it is a quote about like McKenna's fascination with the octopus, and this whole segment about the octopus,
Oh
which I
my
had
God.
never read before. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? So anyway, all this stuff happens. Fast forward after party, get invited to that. I'm like, okay, I guess I don't know anybody. I don't want to like crowd anybody out or latch on to anybody. So I'm kind of just like hanging out at this crazy, like weird psychedelic after party at this place. People are like raving, and Shane does another, like he does like an impromptu comedy set. It's like a very weird situation. I'm fucking exhausted. I really want to go. But I'm just like, I have to stay present here. I have to. And so finally, eventually, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I sit down to have dinner with Ramin and Shane, and multiple synchronicities throughout the dinner. And the whole time I'm just like, don't say anything to him about this, because he basically had a psychotic break around synchronicity stuff before. It's a sensitive subject. And I also don't want him to think that I'm like this psychotic freak that has been like following synchronicities to like meet him and hang out with him. So the whole time I'm just like biting my tongue, like being like, I can't believe this is fucking happening right now. And I'm like writing them down on my phone. And then, like, so I basically am talking there, and then all of a sudden Shane starts talking about having totem animal synchronicities and how you can start seeing, you know, a totem animal, or organism, and it becoming this thing, and there's like this meaning behind it. And he was just talking about it randomly about I forget which animal it was, but I was just like, that was where I kind of felt a little bit more comfortable to kind of bring it up. I'm like, yeah, so I've been having a bit of that. And he's like, oh yeah? And I was just like, yeah. And I was like around octopus, and he was like, octopus synchronicities, okay. And so like that was it. That's all I said, right? We are leaving. It's almost 4 a.m. And again, like I'm in this state of awe, just like completely like dumbstruck about what a weird, surreal thing I've been happen. You know, what has happened and how I got there, and how could I ever explain this to anyone? And is there any purpose of any of this? Is there meaning to it? Like, what the fuck is this? But I'm just in this complete strange state, enjoying it. And so we're getting ready to get an Uber back to our weird ass place that we're staying. And so Shane's just like, nah, dude, like I'll drop you off. Like, I'll take you there. It's like, just come with me. Well, okay. So he's like, I'm just around the corner. We walk down the corner. As we turn the corner, and he's like, yeah, I'm parked right over there. He's literally parked right in front of Octopus Sushi Restaurant. Like, I like was like, I was just like, dude, and he was like, he pointed out, he's like, huh? And he just kind of like laughed, but I was like, dude, what the fuck? I was just like, what the hell? So that kind of shit was happening just left and right, nonstop. And as I'm in the airport, like getting ready to go home, I'm looking on my phone on Twitter, and all of a sudden I see something pop up, and it says, you know, it was like a MAPS conference. So MAPS was like a psychedelic research nonprofit, and yes. they have, you know, they're doing psychedelic science conference right now. They do it every year, but they have all these other like small satellite conferences, impromptu conferences that they do. They're meetups. People do, you know, speaking engagements, where they do like different, you know, seminars or whatever. So all of a sudden I see Shane retweet a MAPS conference, right? And it's happening in Pittsburgh. And I was like, oh, wow. At the time I was living in Portland, but I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, maybe I'll go to that. It's like, you know, MAPS psychedelic conference in Pittsburgh, PA at this date, I like, my jaw dropped. It said, at the Sleeping Octopus.
Oh,
and I was just God. Like, what the fuck? And of course, instantly I bought a ticket. I was like, and I just like, you know, now that I'm friends with him, I text him. I was like, see you at the Sleeping Octopus in a month. And like, you know, like anyway, so it was just nonstop like this. Um, and eventually like it wound up leading me to Peru. I wound up going to Peru, drank ayahuasca with Michael Phillip from Third Eye Drops. Shout out. But yeah, so like, and the thing is like I've told you like maybe like 3% of the full thing, right? It was just so profound, um, and so like so convincing of the existence of like the other, right? Like, but at the same time, I have that part of me that's just like, I don't know what that is, right? Like, I could sit here and tell you that I've gotten pretty convincing arguments around retrocausality, around the idea that time doesn't flow the way we think it does, and that a lot of these things are either precognition or essentially a product of ourselves existing in a future state, sending information back, just a few moments or seconds. And so there's that, because sometimes I'm like, how could it know? Right. And so something like that is attractive to my mind, right? It's an elegant kind of solution of like, it's a lot easier to believe that there is this fundamental system that we don't understand, um in whether it's like the way we experience time, or it's a whole other thing with like the alien stuff. I've heard some pretty interesting, compelling ideas around the grays and the abduction phenomenon and the saucer phenomenon as all being essentially an automated system, being a non-conscious automated system that I think is super interesting. All I know is pretty much everything coming out of the whistleblowers and that whole like nuts and bolts crew, I think a lot of that is complete distraction. And I'm not saying I fully
Yes.
buy into this recent article or anything like that, right? Like I know that that's made a lot of, you know, people upset.
The
That's ruffled a lot of
Yeah.
feathers. The Wall Street Journal.
I
Um,
think that that's like it's kind of funny, right? Like believers have their people and debunkers or skeptics have their people. So, I was actually having this conversation the other day, where like Green Street, profoundly right debunker, but the second Tim Phillips says like, yeah, we got black triangles and orbs. It's like, what? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like everybody has their guy, I think, in my opinion. And I mean, that's just how it is in my opinion, like it's always going to be that way. And I agree with the other aspect that maybe a lot of this is kind of like a cover for hiding the technology, probably. You know what I mean? Like the whole space alien narrative. I think that that's what it is. And then to your other point too, whenever you had mentioned the grays, I think that that was part of like a cultural influence where I think subconsciously, the culture was so influenced by that archetype that it did become part of maybe like some liminal state experiences that people were having. So it was like this collective consciousness affected by the cultural influence. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I see it. I mean, I don't know about you.
I'm open to so much. I'm open to so many different ideas. I think for a long time I found what you just said to be a pretty compelling argument. And don't let me go before I can go a while, by the way, but I have to tell you, I've had some very, the sinks are back, and I've gone years without many, and then all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks, I've gotten pummeled by some super weird shit The octopus is done. That story wrapped itself up very neatly. I had an encounter with an entity in a hallucinatory state, and that ended it essentially. I don't know if that was my mind creating a finality or what, but anyway, I haven't had any of those. That I think that line is done. But just recently, I've had some super fucking compelling, super strange ones that I'll happily share here for the first time. But I think I want to talk about what we're talking about first, because I think it's important. Yeah, like I felt like the archetype explanation was really like a really good one. I mean, and I do think that there's still potentially something to that. Um, in fact, I'm probably most in that camp. Um, almost the idea that throughout time, and I think this is something that Valet talks about a lot, and Keel, like just the idea that we're almost seeing just another phenomenon, like a new representation of the Fae, a new representation of like the fairies, and just over time, the way that we encounter this thing, it shows itself to us in whatever is most current and most common and most easy to
Yeah.
understand, right? It's a symbol. I totally think that symbols and archetypes are a huge part of this, whether that's the explanation for this or not. Now, I liked recently being a contact, talked to Chris Ramsey a bit, and he just had a really, really cool idea. Like, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to try to relay it properly, but he just had a really interesting, compelling idea. Like, kind of just weird theory around the grays, the abduction phenomena, and just the saucers and the underground bases essentially. And he just like he really put something together for me, because I had been sort of scratching at this for a while with Michael Phillip. He kind of rejects it. He doesn't like it. I think for whatever reason, me bringing AI into this conversation like irks him. He doesn't like it, but I'm like very convinced that AI has a huge um overlap and role in the phenomenon, and in fact it could be like completely responsible for it even. I do think that, like, for me it's becoming increasingly too bizarre to ignore the congruency of like the timetable of the race for disclosure and the race for AGI, like, and the way that they interact by making like us completely immersed in post-truth existence. um like, yeah, to me it's not really a coincidence. It feels very related. But is I've been getting more and more down this kind of like cybernetic, like robot android like mindset lately, just trying to like really go there and think about this kind of shit and think about like super consciousness
Cybernetic
and
universe.
not necessarily any of these things specifically, but just trying to put my head in that space and think about
Right.
how that could kind of apply to what we're dealing with here. Because I really just think, like, again, like this super basic nuts and bolts, like, oh, we just haven't been able to get a good video of them. And the ones that you see are like, look at these ones. And the reason we're supposed to be convinced by these ones is because, ha ha ha, appeal to authority. Like, they came from a military person, I swear, or they swear. And I, I mean, all of that to me is just like so not satisfying, and doesn't make any sense to me that it doesn't make any sense to me that the US government specifically would have any type of fucking hegemony when it comes to the phenomenon, and that it would be like that it would be the keeper of all the secrets, right? And that they are like, okay, let's even say that they are, okay, let's even like just assume that. Why why would they be okay with these videos getting out there? Because apparently they're sanctioned, some of these, right? Like, why would they be okay
Yeah.
with some of these, but then not others, right? Um, or why would these be the ones that they do let out, right? And I just find it, really do your homework here. Talk to ChatGPT a little bit about this, because I had a really interesting session the other night just talking about, can you make me a chart of all of the whistleblower videos, all of the official videos that have been leaked out, and tell me where they came from, who released them to the public, in what order, how it all went down. And when you see this just right in front of you all at once, to me, it just doesn't smell good. Like, you're just like,
Nope.
oh, okay. I mean, and that's not to say that any of these people are bad people, right? Like, I'm not making any judgments on the people involved. Um, what I'm saying is anyone can be fooled. Anyone can think that they are on a fucking mission from God or a mission from their fucking country. And anybody, yeah, boom, 11, nailed it. I mean, this is another thing. I'm gonna just dive completely go left here,
I
but
love it.
like, huge problem in this community. Uh, and I'm just talking kind of broadly about the UAP, NHI specifically, because paranormal is like the paranormal community. It's like it's a universe, right? And as you know, with your spaces, it's all over the place.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
specifically UAP, NHI, and especially the people who hold on to or love these whistleblowers and the whole narrative and everything about it. Um, a major problem with the community at large is how fucking apolitical it is, right? And
Yep.
because and I'm not saying like in terms of partisan politics, right? I'm just talking about literally awareness of geopolitics, awareness of like what is happening in the world and the dynamics of why it's happening, and the realities of what all this shit means, right? Um, for most people, what I get a sense of is that for them, this is borderline or like very explicitly escapism, and that's troublesome to me because it it shows in their willingness to latch on to anything someone with a title tells them. And the more political someone is, I find, the less likely they are to trust anyone in the fucking intelligence community. And that's not to say that there aren't people who are good people who like work for the CIA. I wouldn't say there's a lot. But I
I
I
agree.
don't personally, my default is to not trust any of these people, and certainly not to trust states. I don't trust militaries in general, right? There is a major problem with the UFO community that they are way more likely to believe anything someone with a title, an expert, whether they're a fucking uh, a, a doctor or a fucking, a
Like a
biologist,
colonel or something. Yeah, I hear you.
a
Yeah.
military person, anyone with a degree, anyone who has like a PhD next to their name, anyone who ex CIA, current CIA, NSA, whatever, they were more likely to believe what that person says than a person who has had a true blue experience, right? And that is a problem. That is a major problem. Um,
Oh yeah.
and this, I think that the people that work with the people that work with that project know that. They know that most of these people are apolitical, and they know that most of them, I think in general, are looking for people with credentials to give them the goods, and they love it, right? So they've created this whole like carrot stick thing with disclosure, and it's just like another cult, man. It's just another
Yeah. Oh,
QAnon.
it really is. I see it all the time, like a lot of infighting. And I would say there are reasonable arguments for people that are, trying to dismantle the whistleblower argument, kind of what you're doing. And I think I'm probably about 98% on the same boat. But I also think there's a lot of half truths. So whenever you
Yes.
said there's maybe somebody that, or there's people that are maybe being led down a certain path, I would
Mm-hmm.
probably say someone like David Grush is someone to that effect, because in my opinion, I think a lot of why he's been very discreet is because all of these people have tied themselves to him, and it kind of seems like he was doing his own thing in a sense. And also those same people were some of his sources, right? So maybe he's not getting in a skiff because he doesn't want to cross contaminate information, right? And then at the same time, there's another theory that I've been kind of juggling around where, because here's how I reacted whenever he said, I know where the crafts are, I know where the bodies are at, all of
Uh-huh.
that. I was like, no, now they're gonna go hide it. They're gonna go hide it. Like it's on its way to another hangar right now. And
Oh,
so to me, it's just like it's either that was the point of him doing it, like to kind of let these contractors go and do their job and hide it away, or again, right, he was fed a lot of half truths where he did maybe find something, right? But again, it's easy for him to, I guess, get scrutinized because, like I said, it seems like he doesn't want to maybe have some cross contamination of information by maybe getting into a skiff with Lou. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know.
sure. I mean, I give all of them the benefit of the doubt. And again, like I don't judge any of them as people. I don't want to assume like why they do what they do, or like why they don't do certain things. Um, what 11 brought up, I think, is extremely important to recognize. I mean, again, go down a chat GPT rabbit hole, look at the history of whistleblowers in our country. And I don't mean whistleblowers in the UAP world, but look up what the consequences are for other whistleblowers who have shared other things and what happens to them, and how aggressively the government goes after them. And you can say, okay, well, certain ones didn't follow protocols. That's fine. There are instances where people did follow protocols and then still had, at a minimum, some type of disciplinary thing happen, or they
Right.
lose a job, or they lose opportunities. When you see whistleblowers only gain recognition, opportunities, and reward, like, I'm not saying that they don't suffer. I'm not saying that obviously, you know, um, David Grush is obviously an example of someone who it seems like he definitely got dragged through the mud to some extent. And certainly, if you believe the whole narrative of what has played out, seems to have suffered some consequences, at least socially, right? But the people that have come after him, not really, man. And in a lot of ways, like
True.
he set a precedent, almost in a way that was like, hey, you want to write a book, you want to consult on movies, you want to be like a fucking star podcast guest, you want to speak at conferences, you want to do all this shit. And again, I'm not saying he does that, but he opened the door to show what would happen. And obviously Lou step, he's a prime example of someone who does all of that and more, and is he's a beacon for anyone in the military or in the government who may have been told a thing or two that hey, there's this other option, there's this other road I can go down. And that doesn't,
Right.
again, I'm just saying you can't trust, like, it's not that you can't trust them necessarily. Again, like, I'm not trying to make value judgments on them, but for me, it's all about, okay, who are they getting their information from? And like
Yep.
Barber has probably been the most compelling for me, just because at least he had an experience to some, to some degree. Again, I could pull that apart, uh, probably much to some people's chagrin, but like, at least like there is some firsthand thing happening there that I think was like important, like for me. And also, he introduced the whole element of consciousness back into the picture, right? Um, so I think for me, a lot of it though, again, like as someone who has had many experiences and has read every book I can get my hands on that feels remotely worth reading, and listen to fucking God knows how many podcasts and watched how many documentaries and whatever, like none of the whistleblower stuff, like those fucking the hearings were fucking snooze fest, or just completely frustrating. Nothing that has come out of the whistleblowing has been, really all that, intriguing or kind of illuminating. I mean, to me, Immaculate Constellation was intriguing, but then again, like, just feels like, all right, like, I don't know, man, there's just not quite enough here to feel like it's worthy of all the hype and all of the excitement around it. I shouldn't say excitement, but just like, I don't see that as confirmation of anything other than more third hand stories. And like, uh you know Barber, again, like he sort of became, he kind of felt almost like confirmation, like, because he's like, well, I was doing this retrieval stuff, right? But it's like, I don't know, man. It's very frustrating because there's this whole capitalistic and venture completely directly tied to it, right?
Oh yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I appreciate what Skywatcher is doing, and I find it intriguing, and I find all these people intriguing. I watch all their shit, like I want to know about it, because regardless of what they're saying is true or not, it still means something, because there's a reason why it's fucking happening, right? And that is important. That's an important piece of the picture. Um, but again, that whole thing, that whole sphere really, I think, lacks the energy of like the mystery. It lacks the aspect of what I feel, the connection I feel to like Valet and Keel, and sort of the idea of the ultra terrestrial, interdimensional, like hypotheses, like those make sense to me, because it's like, yes, that is why we haven't been able, in a world where every motherfucker has a 4K like video camera on them at all times. That is why we don't have compelling
Yeah.
footage to be like 100% that is something, right? All we have now is this like constant like head scratching question marks, like what is that? And like I said, the same way that AI has made it so we can't ever trust a photograph again, we can't ever trust a video again, AI is completely related to drone technology, and now drones have made it so that we can't trust our eyes, because even what we are aware of in terms of that tech, there's always more of it that we don't know about. And so again,
Yeah.
like all of this stuff, this is the nuts and bolts stuff. Like to me, it's just not even that really that interesting. The interesting stuff is practically invisible, but it's certainly not able to be captured in 4K. And to me, the way that it is captured is direct experience, and certainly in these ways of I do believe that instances of high strangeness and just very unexplainable phenomena that feels directly related to consciousness is is a is a perfect way. The same tropes of coincidence, confirmation. I mean, same. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I wonder that too. Um, I I allow for all of it, right? Like I try to like really
Yes.
accept that again, just because one of them is a total charlatan doesn't mean that there aren't ones in there that are well-meaning, might completely believe it, and maybe they have had experiences that are convincing enough to them to where they feel like, okay, what they've seen is confirmation, whatever, okay, fine. To me, again, it doesn't really all like, yeah, I really, really resonate with the more mysterious, uh, the aspects that don't have to involve us having anti-gravity tech, that don't involve us having to like basically have some very hard to believe fundamentally like faulty understanding of the laws of physics for it to be able to be possible. Like if you look into interdimensional um answers and just that type of direction, it just makes more and more sense. And to me, like you just think about stuff that wasn't possible for us to be aware of until we were aware of it, right? Like fuck, there were many years in humans' lives where we literally thought gorillas were cryptids. Like they weren't, we didn't confirm them as a species until like 1850 or 1847 or some shit. So like, and like all of the invisible organisms, all of the different, like invisible to the human eye, like we have to broaden like the way we're looking at it, in my opinion, and think that maybe this other phenomenon that like that's why I kind of get interested in when I hear someone come up with something outside of the box for the grays and the saucers and the underground thing as some type of strange automated sort of like uh evolutionary program that has existed for millennia. Like that's interesting to me. I don't know if that's true,
Yeah.
but I would see that as a separate thing from what I see as the fundamental phenomenon, which is interdimensional and sort of ultra terrestrial. um like that to me resonates deeply. So yeah, exactly. Kona
No,
Dragon 2.
yeah, I honestly I agree with everything that you've been saying, and you've been talking about synchronicities. I mean, talk about synchronicities for myself having this conversation with you. It's been, you know, very synchronistic. I mean, I've seen you play a ton of times, and you know, seeing your perspective on this, it's answering a lot of things in my mind, if that makes sense. And yeah, man, I really think that a lot of this, I think a lot of people like in the government and the DoD, they don't know what this is. And I think that's where a lot of these narratives are coming from. I do think it is a cover for tech. That's my
Mhm.
personal opinion.
Me too.
And the reason why I think that too is because when you look at, again, let's go back to David Grush. Lou was kind of stepping out of the limelight. And it just seems like that whole TTSA crew, they had already established a narrative. So it was almost like, oh, this guy's like, he's throwing everything off. You kind of know David Grush, right, Lou? You worked with him at Space Force for a little bit, even though you say his name is Grush. But yeah, let's let's just let's revamp it back up, man. Let's revamp it back up. And then it almost felt like with David Grush, it was at least a small step forward and then two steps back. You had Lou's book coming out, the podcast tour. Honestly, that second hearing was just terrible, in my opinion. I mean, it was just terrible.
It was so bad.
So so I'm of the same mind, dude. Like I like to think of things, you know, in a very interdimensional type of perspective, intertwined with consciousness and all of like the fractalization behind that too. I mean, I'm totally on board with that, and it doesn't mean that I don't think that, you know, there aren't real UFOs or physical UFOs, but I'm maybe more of the mind that they're like probes or something. Like they're just disposable, right? And we're just like fucking, you know, reverse engineering whatever we can from that. But I don't know how much I believe in like all of these races and stuff. I think it's maybe more to the effect of what you were talking about again, right? With the archetypes and like the cultural influence by propaganda, you know? So that's kind of, you know, I agree with a lot of what you said, basically.
I mean, yeah, I totally, and I'll just say, like, I don't fully subscribe to any of that. I'm just like expressing, um, where my speculations kind of lie at the moment,
Yeah.
and certainly, I just feel like there's just so much time wasted on this shit and not enough talking about the fucking juicy ass weirdness that is constantly
Yes.
happening at all times, and people need to spend less time thinking about or reading about these like whistleblowers who basically are like the equivalent of like a fucking bad episode of Ancient Aliens in terms of what they actually tell you. Um, you know, like, and get better at telling your stories, get better at like expressing and documenting, and I just feel like that's what's really severely lacking, because like in a world where like everyone has a fucking camera and everyone has the ability to get online and talk about their stuff, there's really not that many people that can talk about it in a super compelling way, and also like really pay attention to detail and attention to why certain aspects of their story matter, and why, like, you need to be able to present the mystery as a mystery. Like, how do you explain that? And always be welcome for someone to push back on that and say, well, what about this? Because for me, like, there's no greater joy and no other like better sign of respect than someone saying, well, it could be this, right? um like,
Yes.
I appreciate that at all times. And um in fact, again, as someone who has gone through these periods of time where I was frightened by what I was experiencing and by what I was seeing, I was desperate for someone to give me a real explanation for it. So I think the more open you can be, and the more you can just really, the documenting of it, I can't stress that enough, because just the sheer amount of stuff that's happened to me, especially just in the realm of synchronicity and high strangeness, it's so easy to forget. It's so easy, especially like just today, okay? As I was like what I call doing my homework, I was doing my homework for this podcast, and I was just cramming a bunch of shit and listening to a bunch of things that I wanted to just sort of like have fresh in my mind. And what would happen is, I have severe ADHD, and and I constantly will have something going and not be listening to it and then do something else, right? So I'll have to rewind it a bunch and do all that. And like, I can't even tell you how many times I would be listening to something and I would be basically hours behind in my note taking. Like, all of a sudden a thought would formulate in my mind and I'd be like, oh, right, this thing that I was listening to earlier. And I would take a little note. And as I would write a word, the person would say the word, right? Like, that I was listening to. All of a sudden, I'm sucked in and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm even listening to. Like, I haven't been paying attention at all. I was just 2 hours behind thinking about something I listened to 2 hours ago. And somehow I typed the word that the person just said. That happened to me today 20 plus times. Okay. Like, I mean, once, twice, you can say, sure, that's just total coincidence, right? But at a certain point, it starts to feel like this is some kind of weird function of consciousness, right? Um, Even if that is just truly, um, you know, like a weird like reverse of like a weird, as soon as that person said I was spitting, I just I completely broke down and like couldn't talk anymore. Um is that synchronicity or is just like performance anxiety? I don't know. I think, you know, it just happened all day long. And I didn't take any note of it though, right? I was like, I can't spend the time to type out what fucking just happened to me today. All of the instances of which this occurred, I could have documented it. And in fact, when I was in my octopus portal, I was doing that. I would note the minute and the second of the podcast I was listening to, and then describe the instance in which the word lined up. And I have pages and pages of this shit, right? But at a certain point, for me, all it's about is documenting that it happens, seeing it, acknowledging, and then when you start realizing the frequency at which that it happens, it's fucking mind-blowing. All right, I really want to tell you these recent synchronicities because I think they're fucking jaw-dropping. All right.
Do it.
Okay. So this was the first sort of like re-entry in this. And it's cool because my other syncs, I have some other really good ones, but I've told them on different pods. These are totally fresh. And this is like still wow. Okay. So the other day on my Colin Circa account, I shared a video of a nurse, an ER nurse that had been protesting and was shot in the eye with a projectile from a cop. And he was holding his eye, and there's just blood streaming down his face, and he's holding his eye, and he's like literally giving an interview like this, right? And so actually, if I'm thinking about it correctly, it would be this eye. I'm trying to do it like the reverse of the photo video. So I wonder if you'll be able to see my screen if I held it up, because the photographic evidence is pretty good. Let's see if I can get this up here. So anyway, that was the first thing that happened. Oh, wow. Like, what the fuck, dude? Are you serious right now? Yo, look at this. Do you see all these blanks? Do you see this? Wait, do you see these blank images?
Yeah.
Why? What the fuck? What is
It's
that?
it's the phenomena. It's messing with us.
Yo, that
This
is
whole
weird.
podcast.
Okay, wait. It might be loaded on another thing. Yo, that was weird. Okay. All right. Let's see if you can see this. Can you see it?
Yeah. Okay, I can see
Okay.
it.
So there it is. This is the beginning of the story. I post this on my story, say something about, fuck ICE, like blah blah blah. Basically just saying that people don't care about what you contribute to society. They're still going to blast you anyway. And so later that evening, a few hours later, maybe like 4 hours later, my I don't think so. I don't think Lou's protesting shit, bro.
He astral traveled and came into your phone, and he
Yeah,
just he totally made it go disarray. No, go ahead. Sorry, finish your
it
story.
does kind of look like him. I don't know, in a weird way. But okay, so I post that in my story, and then like 4 hours later, my wife Sarah just, it was like, we're both like trying to like shake each other out of like the apocalyptic fucking mindset lately and try to like brings a little bit of joy back into our lives here and there as much as we can. And she's like, let's watch a movie or something that you really liked as a kid, like like and I, in my head, I thought she was talking like fucking like Disney, like Robin Hood or some shit, right? I thought she was going like kid. But she's like, didn't you like really like RoboCop? Should we watch RoboCop? And I was like, no. I was like, I loved RoboCop, but I don't want to watch RoboCop. And she's like, what about Terminator? Like, you really like Terminator? And I was like, oh yeah, I was obsessed with the Terminator movies. And she's like, I've never seen the original. And I was like, oh, okay, sick. Like, let's watch Terminator. So we put on Terminator, we're watching, and then very early on, there's a scene where the Terminator like injures his eye, and the eye, like, he has to perform surgery on his own eye. So like, here's like the first thing, and I remember noticing this, that like the blood,
Oh no.
and it's on the same exact side as the guy, and I was like, damn. Funny. And I'm looking at that, and then here's him looking in the mirror doing his little surgery on the eye.
Yeah.
And so it was like, it was funny because when I was at Contact, I had told a couple interesting stories, and I realized, man, it's been a long time since any of this shit has happened to me. That's kind of weird. And so I had pulled up my synchronicity journals, and I was kind of like I was like, I guess I have to like re-engage myself. So I was like reading all my synchronicity stories. This was like 2 weeks ago. Nothing. The radio silence. Then just in this moment, it struck me, oh fuck, this image is like dead on to that image I shared earlier. And it was striking, you know, it was just kind of like, it's subtle, but it felt like something, right? I was like, I'll bite. So I started like mentally just sort of letting that in, right? And this is really important. If you want to sort of like make synchronicities happen, and you have to do this, you have to have some type of conscious reflection of the fact that they're happening, acknowledge them, and sort of like process them, if you want them to continue. So I'm sitting there thinking, man, wow, this is a pretty fucking dark ass synchronicity to have, like, around a fucking, you know, exploded eyeball. Um, you know, uh, wow, what a perfect synchronicity for our time, really.
Right.
And so I go to bed sort of with that thought. I was really actually loving. I watched Terminator 1. I watched Terminator 2. I got halfway through Terminator 3, and then I fell asleep. But I kept thinking about it. Pattern recognition. I know. Okay, now here's something. All right, pattern recognition, right? Sure. Now explain this. The next morning, I wake up. Don't forget, I went to bed thinking about this. I went to bed thinking about the fucking eye and how that was an interesting synchronicity. Dude, the next day, I pull up my phone. I open my DMs on X. My friend Maria, amazing artist, goes by 0x Vestica on X. Incredible artist. We probably like DM a few times a year. I'll even go as say as many as like maybe like 6 times a year, something like that. But we also see each other at art conferences, so we definitely know each other. We're not total strangers, so it wasn't totally out of pocket for her to send me this, but we're not like talking every single fucking day. And certainly she's never sent me a DM like this before. The last time she had sent me a DM, by the way, was November 28th, 2024. Just so you know how regularly we talk. So if you want to like try to do the odds of this fucking happening, all right. I read this. It's like 8 in the morning. Hey, how are you? I had the weirdest dream about you last night. Ahaha. It goes like this. I lost one eye and had to keep it closed or blood would start pouring out. Then I looked in the mirror to check how bad it was, and when I opened it just a little, there was a tiny version of you standing inside the eye hole.
Oh
Ahaha.
my god.
LOL.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, that one. I don't know why. Maybe because
Is that
it's like
pattern
so recent.
recognition? Is that
That
fucking
is
pattern
pretty.
recognition? What the
Yeah,
fuck
they're
is that
screen.
shit?
Yeah, they're screwed. Yeah, he's like, all right.
Okay.
He's like, that's wild.
I mean, like, okay,
Oh man.
like my skeptical side, and this is what I'm telling. This is what I'm. Yes, yo, like Robert Anton Wilson is my fucking G. Like all of these guys are the people I look to, right? Like Robert Anton Wilson, Terrence McKenna, Philip K. Dick, all the people like in Eric Davis's High Weirdness book, like they all encountered things like this, and they've been in Chapel Perilous. I understand. Like to me, like that's it, right? That by no means is that the craziest one I've ever had. So just take what you feel about that wonder and sort of like how the fuck, like what is that, right? And I checked, by the way, she does not follow that Instagram account. She doesn't follow my other Instagram account because I thought maybe she saw me post that story and she subconsciously got that in her head. She does not follow my Colin Circa account. She did not see it. And when I told her the story, she was like, what the fuck does that mean? Holy shit. And so this is what I mean, you know, when I say that that is a hell of a lot more convincing to me than any of the whistleblower shit. That is a hell of a lot
Yes.
more convincing to me than seeing a few lights in the sky because it feels like communication. Uh it feels like proof of consciousness being, you know, like evolving in some way outside of ourselves, right? You know, that when it
Right.
when it comes from the outside, that's it, right? Like it's funny because when I told this to a couple other people, people always react to the Terminator thing as if that's the punchline. And I'm like, no, strap in. You don't even know. Like this is it. Like and the Terminator thing is interesting and there's plenty of stuff that happens like that all the time, right? But it's that next level that comes from outside of you to shake you and be like, now what, how are you going to explain this one? And there was more, by the way. There was more later that day.
Right.
And this is to give you a good understanding of how the octopus thing would unravel and sort of branch out. The later in that day, um, I man, more of these fucking disappeared images, man. What the hell, bro? Weird.
Damn it, Lou.
Um, it's so funny because a picture of him just popped up as soon as you fucking said that. Hold on a
Oh
second,
my God. Synchronicity. There you go.
dude. Hold on. I'm really trying to concentrate to find this one other image to show you. This is the problem with that art project of mine where I'm literally just screen capping all fucking day. There's just like I have to go so okay. So I had talked to my dad the day before about that. Did you see that crash that happened in India and there was one
Yeah. With
survivor?
the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So um we were talking, I was over at his house for coffee the other day, the day before Terminator. No, actually it was the same day as Terminator, earlier in the day. But so I had that on the brain and after all this shit had happened, I told him about it and he was just like, whoa. And he's like definitely he's where I got like my very strong skeptic side. He's become way more open and definitely more he's like definitely intrigued by these things that happen to me all the time. He always wants me to tell him the whole story because he's like, I don't know what to say about that. But anyway, so um we had just talked about that crash and we were joking about seat 11A and how like, oh, like that's going to be a very expensive, that's going to be an expensive ass seat soon because everybody's going to be trying to get that thinking it's lucky and all this stuff, trying to repeat it. And as you know, after I told him, hey dude, do not, he's like going to break my fucking wire. Chill. Um, uh, yeah, as I told him all the synchronicities about the eyeball, I see a fucking news notification. I'm just like, flipping through. I look through my news notification. It says some crazy headline about how someone had sat in 11A 27 years prior in a different plane that crashed and survived. And they told a story about it. So that in itself is a synchronicity, right? Synchronicity is within the thing. This is like how the onion starts to fucking peel. So I see that, I click on it, and it won't load. And I'm like, fuck. So then again, being ADHD brained, I opened up Instagram. Just completely forgot what I was doing. Like, oh, that won't load. Okay. Dopamine, Instagram. First thing that pops up is this story. And I'm like, wow. I mean, that's this is very explainable through like Google, search shit and the way that they listen to you, surveillance, capitalism, and all this stuff. So I'm not that surprised by it, but it's almost like I was like subconsciously like, oh, maybe it'll be on Instagram. First thing that pops up is the story. And the first thing I see is picture of homeboy, and his eyes, that same eye is all fucked up. And I just look at that,
Oh my God.
and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, is this continuation? And then I looked at it as like Ty Singer, who survived a plane crash 27 years ago, reveals he sat in seat 11A, as same as India crash survivor. And I sent that to my dad, like, yo, what the fuck? And he was just like, he like sent an emoji with like a winky eye, like just like, kind of like making light of it or whatever. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, that one's kind of subtle, but it still is in line with these happenings, because again, like I said, it's the theme of the thing is a synchronicity in itself. And it happened directly out of me talking about synchronicities with my dad. The thing popped up immediately for me. And then sure enough, because the thing is as this starts happening, all you want is, as the weirdness starts to bubble up like that, you're looking for the icon. And for me, the icon was the eye. Could I find any evidence of communication in this weirdness? Boom, his eye was fucked up, right? And so I see the eye, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, shit, dude, it's fucking almost 2. Like, I have to get some work done. I've been like reveling in this all fucking morning, right? And so nice. And so I open up my computer, open Chrome. I always have like 8 bajillion thousand. Oh, he's gonna chaos over here. Hold on, 1 second. Hey, get down. Come on, get over here. Good boy.
Kitty shenanigans.
Yeah. So I open my computer. I open one of the 1,000,000 tabs I had minimized, right? And the first thing that comes up is my HBO Max profile, right? And this is just the first thing that pops up when I go to sit down and do work after the fucking India guy. And this is what it was set to on Max.
Oh my God.
And I audibly said, ah. And I just like closed it, and I just said like, no more today. And that was it. And so, I mean, that was stunning. It was like it was like a fucking beautiful show of fireworks just for me, right? That's how it felt. And I was like, okay, I'm dialed back in. What was funny is I told my friend Josh that, and he instantly sent me a link to protective eyewear, and it was true, because I was all day like very like psychotically like going into the bathroom and like looking at my eye, like, is my eye okay? Like, and then I was like walking carefully, like, because I'm clumsy, and I was like, I've walked into branches before, so I was very hyper aware. But yeah, anyway, hopefully nothing happens with my eye. But I was like, man, I really don't want this to be, I don't want to have a year of like fucking, eyeball removal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was
Do
like,
it.
thank you for the show. I enjoyed that. Maybe something else next time. I literally say these things out loud. And so here's where we can end this synchronicity thing. And I like, it is like the most meta of fucking meta synchronicities. It's beautiful. It was really, I mean, and this is another one that just really left me. I mean, it left me fucking speechless. So the way I was talking about how continuation is like the art of the game, right? It links up to things, goes almost like hops from thing to thing. And that is a way in which that it feels very much like an entity, because it just like it needs a thing to go to. And so I was telling Michael Phillip about the Terminator Eye stuff, and he was like, wow, man. Like he was like, and he's like at psychedelic science, he's traveling right now. And he was just like, wow. And he mentioned that when we were, I'm pretty sure he was talking about when we were at Contact, but he could have also been talking about a separate conversation he had with Gino from the Y-Files. And he was talking about how he was getting pretty heavily into synchronicity with him. As I'm telling him about synchronicity, he starts telling me about talking to Gino from the Y-Files about synchronicity. He's like, I was talking to Gino from the Y-Files about synchronicity, and now they're doing an episode on it, and I'm watching it, and now they're talking about like the gateway, and they're talking about like, and he's like, wow, holy shit. And he's like, I'm having like a mini, sync right now from this. And I was like, wow, it's contagious like that, right? And so later that evening, I'm up late. I'm working on some art. Oh my god, hold on a second. Hey. I'm up late. I'm working on some art, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to take a break and just like watch some stuff on YouTube. Open YouTube. First thing that pops up, Wi-Fi synchronicity. I'm like, why not? Let's go. Why not? Get it? And so I start watching it, and instantly, he starts off the show by talking about Jung and the creation of synchronicity. Which is like a fucking amazing story, by the way. I actually clipped it so we could have it here. Not here, but I wanted it to show other people like Michael and those people. So I can play it real quick just so you have the audio at least. Hopefully it'll come through. Let's see. Tell me if you can, little test. Hold on one sec.
Talking with a patient.
Can you hear that?
She kept having a dream about a golden scarab, a golden beetle, an Egyptian symbol of death, rebirth, and transformation. Young listened patiently. He'd heard this dream before, many times. But then he heard something else. Tapping at the window. A beetle was hitting the glass over and over. Young opened the window, caught the beetle, and gently studied it for a second. It was golden green, a rose chafer, the closest thing to a scarab in Switzerland. He handed it to his patient and said, "Here's your scarab." At that moment, Jung realized that there's more to our reality than we see. He believed that mind and matter are intertwined. A reality is created by our collective consciousness. And Carl Jung wasn't some mystic. He was a scientist. He was a highly published, highly respected psychiatrist. But when that beetle tapped on his window, it changed him forever. He didn't think this was a random coincidence. It was a meaningful coincidence. He called it synchronicity. Events may seem coincidental, but they're connected by cause and consciousness. The universe, reality itself, responds to human thought. In 1944,
okay, right? So that's the clip.
Psychiatrist Carl Jung was...
Yeah.
It's a half hour thing, but I loved the overview and the reconnection of the Jung story, and I was like thinking about it a lot, right? And I was thinking about, wow, like that's just so, like, what a legend that he was paying attention in that way and caught onto this. And I was thinking about how it was cool that it wasn't directly a scarab. It was the closest thing that a scarab, closest thing to a scarab that could be there in Sweden where he was. And so he understood the archetypes. Obviously, he understood the symbology, and he was able to still interpret that as meaningful and sort of like almost like communication of sorts, right? And so I thought about that. I made that note in my head as I was watching it. I thought that was really cool. I also started thinking about how remarkable it was that living in wooded areas almost, most of my life, spending time on the West Coast near the woods, and certainly most of my life over here on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, lots of beetles, but I couldn't ever remember seeing a golden one or golden brown or anything but a black beetle, really. And I was just thinking about how that makes it even more special. The coloring of it makes it even more rare, all of that. And so the next day, I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm just making some art. And I kid you not, all of a sudden there's tapping, right? And it's not a beetle. I look over, it's my wife, it's Sarah, outside holding something, and she goes, "Come over here." And she has no idea about any of this yet. Didn't know that I watched that, wasn't there when I watched it. Didn't know about the Michael story, about the Y files, about Gino. And I walk over to the fucking door, look through the window of the door that she fucking tapped on, and she's got this golden brown beetle. And like, I was just like, what the fuck? And yes, my wife is a garden gnome. Yes, my wife would always show me a beetle if she felt it was worth showing me.
I think
She
the
hasn't.
feed froze up on Colin's side here for a second.
I can see you.
Oh, you're back.
Am I?
Yeah,
Can
you
you
were
see me?
frozen. Yeah, you were frozen.
Okay. Can you hear me all right? Let me just. I'm
Yeah.
so close to being finished. Did you see the beetle?
Yeah. The
Okay.
gold beetle, yeah.
The golden brown beetle. I was like, what the fuck? And I just went out there. I took a photo of it. I was like, just looking at it. It was just chilling on her fucking garden mitt. As I went inside, first of all, she said, "I think he's hurt." He just like plopped right in front of me, like onto my thing, and hasn't left. And so I went out. She knocked on the door to show me. I went out there, took photos. I asked her. I went back out there, and she's like, "As soon as you went inside, it flew away, like just flew away instantly." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And I shit you not, we've been in this house for 4 years. That is the first time she's showed me a beetle since we've been here. I was like, "When was the last time you showed me a beetle?" She's like, "I think maybe one at your parents' house when we were in between houses, over 4 years ago, though." So it's not like my wife's showing me beetles every day. The fact that this happened 24 hours. Oh no. You got me still?
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The fact that it happened 24 hours, like less than 24 hours after I watched that and was fixated on that scene and thinking about the fact that I had never seen a golden brown beetle. And it's the meta. It's like literally the synchronicity of synchronicities. It's the origin story of synchronicities, right? So to me, that was just like, and I had asked for something different, right? I didn't want the fucking eyeball again. I was like, please, something else. I was like, oh, how about an oldie? How about a classic? How about that?
Right.
So yeah, man. I mean, I don't, again, it's funny because someone was like, what do you think this means? When I told him the eyeball thing, I was like, I don't know that it means anything necessarily. And I think what I said was like, what I do think it indicates, because they were looking for like an interpretation, like, are you going to hurt your eye? Like, are you supposed to be looking for something, like, whatever, all of this stuff. And I was like, well, I think it's more about the communication in itself. In my past, I've been able to follow synchronicity to synchronicity. And if there is an engagement, like an event or a person or a phone number or an email or anything like that involved in it, then I would either email it, call it, go to the event, do the thing. I'm like, but I didn't interpret it as I need to go swim with octopus like before, right? It's like you see it as a substrate of communication. And so anyway, I just said, I'm like, I don't have it in me to follow this one to anything, right? But what I would say is, like, to me, it's an indication that consciousness is truly something that exists outside of ourselves and is most likely what is making our reality. And yeah. There you go.
That's heavy, man. A lot of synchronicities. I mean, yeah, so this kind of underlines, right, what we were talking about in terms of the conversation around ufology and consciousness and the psychology. I think even if it's all hallucinations, whatever, right? I think that that's still super interesting, right? Like
Oh
the
yeah.
psychology behind that, like I can have a conversation. I mean, we basically did it, right? For days upon end with this stuff. So I'm on the same boat. But Colin, I wanted to ask you one last question here as we send out everybody for the night here. So do you have any advice you would maybe give to artists or experiencers or people trying to explore, I guess you can say, their inner world or higher states through their work or just their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I would say is to really engage your attention on things that are happening all around you, and especially the ones that feel maybe a little mundane sometimes, and see everything as a possibility for communication. Or if you want to simplify that and not freak yourself out, see it as a possibility for inspiration. I think that, overall, like, everything we talked about today, like, at the root of it is consciousness, but like right on top of that, a super important aspect of all this is intuition.
Yes.
And I think that intuition is the key to most things in life. Certainly for me, when it comes to being creative, learning how to engage my intuition, not in a overthinking, analytical, hypercritical mind, but my intuitive mind, which is more like a body sensation thing. When I'm creating a painting, I will feel like resistance or sort of like some tension as I'm making it, as I make certain changes. And when there's no tension, I know that I've done something wrong, that I've given into an impulse to go a route that's most likely being directed by some inhabited voice that I took on over the years. Someone else's opinion of something has seeped in. That tension is really important. It represents sort of like fear and sort of like risk, and really stepping into, like, it's exploration, right? And I think that's really what all this is about. Creativity, the mystery of the phenomenon, like all of it is wrapped around, like, can you find signal amongst the noise, right? Because at the end of the day, people need to really ask themselves this: what do you get out of official disclosure? What does that do for you? How does your life change the next day, right? Like what really is it? Really just like a box that you need checked, that you've become obsessed with it in some way, that you're chasing it like as if it's going to be some moment where all of a sudden your life makes sense, or all of a sudden reality is just going. You think if disclosure happens that all of a sudden you're just going to have like nonstop like encounters or something? It'll be the same as it ever was, right? What you need to seek instead of disclosure is experience. And I think just simply by seeking it in it like alone, you will be on a path that you can integrate into any practice you want, whether it's creative or just simply being more you know more alive, really. Like, I think about all the years I spent as a kid working jobs that I fucking hated as a very young person, which taught me that I can't do this. I can't fucking work a 9-to-5 job. I just fucking can't. And my engagement with the mystery, my engagement with the phenomenon was what made me still love my life and still feel like a compulsion to look at everything that was in front of me as if it was like some new thing I'd never seen before, right? The second you just like let other people dictate what you believe is true or not, you've kind of missed the whole point. Like, all of this is about direct experience. All of this is about how you integrate that, whatever it is that you experience or whatever it is you take in information wise. What does it do for your life, and how does it change your life? And like, how will you live tomorrow differently with some knowledge? I mean, that's probably my biggest tip, is really don't waste your time on carrot and stick bullshit. Like, create your own adventure. Go out there and fucking experience some shit. And like, not to get super political or anything like that, but just to put a cap on this, because it is something that I think about a lot. Like, people need to get real. Like, if you think that what is happening in the world isn't somehow also connected to the phenomenon, you're fucking kidding yourself, dude.
Oh yeah,
Like,
totally.
if you think that collective liberation is not related to everything we're talking about here, I mean, the people who literally think about like they claim or think that we are ready for a galactic federation to like literally to engage with species, like intelligent species, like from other galaxies, dimensions, whatever they want to think. But yet they can't get along with their neighbors. Okay. Like, we're talking about people here who dream of encountering the most bizarre, the most, like, by definition, alien life form that you can ever imagine. And yet these people have a problem with trans people. Now, everyone needs to fucking get real with themselves here. Like, you need to be a part of breaking down status quo. You need to be a part of thinking outside of what the fucking government tells you. You need to be a part of evolution of our species, not regressing back to bullshit that was like imprisoned us decades ago. Like, so yeah, it just makes me sick when I see people who are like, you know, pro whistleblower, but then also somehow like pro war. And like, you know, it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, the cognitive dissonance blows my mind. So
Oh yeah.
all I'm saying is it's all connected, it's all related. I know that's like the most cliche fucking phrase ever, but I feel like I've just illustrated how it is. So think about that, remember that, and then somewhere in the middle of that, try to make shit. Try to make some cool shit. And then send it to me, because I'll like check it out.
I love it. I love it. Well, Colin, thanks so much again for joining the portal room today, man. I really appreciated this conversation. It really was a massive synchronicity for me, as I told you, and everybody that tuned in the chat. This was fun. A lot of technical difficulties, you know, maybe maybe for a reason. I don't know what that could be, but it was fun. And everybody, make sure to go follow Colin's stuff down below in the description. And yeah, thanks again for joining the portal room, everybody. Peace. Have a good night, everyone.